database management, all those core subjects, they obviously help you a lot, not just for competitive coding and not just for these interviews and getting in, but also making you a engineer and actually helping you in your job later. And the clubs, they actually helped me a lot. So I was part of developer student clubs and Microsoft Learning Student Ambassadors, and prior to that, I was part of DDU Connect as well. So being in these clubs actually helps you a lot. It helped a lot in my interviews. It gives you a lot of skills, right? I mean, how to talk to people, networking. I knew a lot of people through this. I knew the seniors and juniors and had a big network. So even when the time of these interviews, right, how do you get to know that you have to apply at this place? It's when somebody else shares it with you. It's not always just, you don't always get pop-ups from LinkedIn, right? You need a network of people to actually help you through this. So obviously it helped a lot being a part of these clubs. And yeah, finally competitive coding, that is something that you have to work hard for.
Okay, Malia. I just want to ask you, can you identify the few kinds of things you would have done differently that have made more change than the usual?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I would have started coding a little bit earlier. I was fortunate enough that because of the pandemic and entire thing, I had a lot of time in my final year to actually do coding, and even like so much amount of coding that I was able to get past these interviews. But I would have definitely started it a lot sooner.
Yes, thank you, Maya, for the insightful answer. So I just want to ask you, how did the participation in various clubs and communities have helped you in your journey?
Okay. Well, the first thing is that you want to get into these clubs. So there are obviously like interviews that are held for that. So you get like an interview practice right then for free, right? And then obviously you know a lot of people. As I said, a lot of networking happens to these clubs. You would generally not interact with just randomly anybody, you know, at least not, maybe just people from your year, yeah. But how do you know the seniors, the juniors, and how do you know what's going on, right? I mean, that all of that helps a lot. It is a lot helpful to you. So that is there. And then the public speaking skills, or like how do you convey your ideas? How do you convince other people? How do you maintain a professional relationship with someone, or just general networking skills? Yeah.
Also, can you share some important memories that you have developed in these clubs, or any special moments?
So actually, DDU Connect was like very close to my heart in that manner, because I was there from the first year, right? And because I was like such an active part of that, it was like almost every day, every other day, I would dine out or had to go out for just for meetings as well, and even like just because we wanted to, we went out a lot. So, and I met a lot of people through that. I found some good friends through that. So, yeah, that was from Did You Connect? I mean, yeah, going out with people, and that was, those were good memories.
And you were also part of MLSCGT when DSC.
Yeah. So that was in my third year, yeah, that I joined. And the most like memorable thing from that would be the conducting a session. So I was only able to conduct, I guess, one session. It was on Flutter, and that was the only session that I was able to conduct offline. So I mean, that was a very different experience, handling the entire crowd and actually conveying what I wanted to say to them. So that was something. But after that, then it all shifted online. So that has been a challenge.
Okay. So Malia, some people tend to do internships as early as early as the end of the first year. According to you, what is the apt time for industrial internship?
So internship experience is never going to be a waste. It is obviously going to be helpful. If you can get an internship in the very first year or something, do it, go for it, because I mean, it is going to be a good use of your time. But obviously in the end of your third year, if you could do that, right? So that would count for at least 2 internships, because I've seen a lot of people, a lot of resumes, and I see that people don't have enough to mention in that, because obviously you're a college graduate. What are you going to mention in that? You have your projects, okay, skills, and what else? It looks a lot empty. So this is something that you can put in there, and this is something that you can talk about in your interviews. That yeah, I did this internship, I worked in these things, and that has helped me in whatever way. So one internship you're obviously going to get in your final year, but including that, like if you can get one more, that will be a good benefit, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, and can you emphasize on how to get one, or like a specific skill set you should have that will guarantee your internship?
Okay. So to get in, I would say, I mean, it depends in which company you are applying, right? For service-based companies, at least, they would want you to have good coding skills. Yeah. But in addition to that, you should be like very well aware with your object orientation concepts and your database management skills. So they would ask you questions for SQL or object orientation questions, not particular to some language, but maybe just in general, or operating systems, computer networks, all those core subjects. I believe that you should be well aware with. And in addition to that, it depends in which company you're applying, right? In which tech stack do they work? Because most of these interviewers, they would ask you questions based on what they know, and that would be from the framework that they are working in. So it is always a benefit to know about that. And for internships, I believe they won't go so hard on you. So it's not that difficult. It's all right. I mean, if you know your basics, it won't be that difficult.
Okay, thank you for that insightful answer. So can you share your experience as an intern at BNY Mellon?
Sure. So I started in February, my internship at BNY Mellon Technology. And in that, I majorly worked in Angular and Java. So the project that I was given was to migrate this entire application, which was already running in Java. The front end was in JSP, so I had to migrate that to Angular and just separate the front end and the back end and create REST APIs and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was helpful in the way that I actually got to understand how things work at at an industry level. And when you are making a project just for the university, right, you don't take care of a lot of things, and you're like, okay, if it's not working, then let it be. I won't implement this functionality. I'll do this instead, or something like that. But that is not something that works in industry, right? If you like a proper authentication or properly segregated code and everything, that is all a lot important. And these are the skills that I learned at BNY.
So you talk about migration. So why migrations are necessary all the time, or do we just do for another purpose?
I mean, at a point, yeah, it gets necessary, because as your project grows, right, how do you handle these things? Because I mean, it was an application that was majorly meant for the internal use, not for the external, not for other people, right? It was used within the company, but it would have started as a smaller scale project. But I mean, if it is written in JSP, if the code is written in JSP, how hard it can be to just maintain the front end, right? And compared to that, if you have something in Angular, if you just have like REST APIs in Java and the front end in Angular, it would be a lot easy to manage that and scale it further. So, I mean, the scaling part is, I guess, the major reason for migration, and also the management of your code.
And how was the coding round there in at
It
BNY?
wasn't, it wasn't very difficult. I don't believe they expected like a lot of expertise in coding, but yeah, some awareness with that. And along with, so it wasn't just coding. Along with that, they had some rounds for, one round for asking other questions, right? Like technical itself, but something like in object orientation or database or something like that. Yeah, system design questions.
And how did you get the internship? Like, do you have any referrals, or like you directly applied from their page?
So they had a coding round for this, for hiring interns, and I just took part in that coding round. I didn't have any high expectations or anything, but I got selected for it. So after that, I had to go through about 3 rounds of interviews. 2 of them were technical, had coding and other technical questions. And the third one was a more managerial round that was actually taken by my skip level manager itself. And so they were just trying to see if I would fit in well.
And one thing that these companies are using a lot of different technologies, and we are not even aware of that. And if we join these companies, then we have to learn at very fast pace. So,
Right.
so can you share some insights on that? Like, how did you learn these technologies at very fast?
Right. So, I mean, they understand this when you go to these big organizations, right? And the technique, the whatever tech stack that they are using, they understand that you might not be well aware with it. So that is obviously the reason why they don't judge you on that. Like they won't judge you on your skills in a particular language or a particular framework, because they know that not everybody will be well aware with that. But they provide enough resources and enough time for you to learn those things. And so the thing is that in our university itself, we learn various frameworks, right? Like for at least for computer engineering, we had .NET, Angular, Spring Boot, all of that. So I've seen like people are like at our university, especially I've seen this, that we are like, why do I need to learn this, right? These are not even used in the industry anymore and everything. But the core things, they don't change, right? The design patterns that I use there, something like MVC or dependency injection or these skills, I mean, these things, they are going to be like used in even other frameworks, right? So it gets easier to learn. Like if you know one framework, it gets easier to learn another framework, because I mean, they don't differ completely.
Okay.
Okay, so thanks for sharing your experience as an intern. There's a general belief that competitive coding is necessary to get into FANG companies. What is your take on that? Uh,
It is obviously very necessary. So all the rounds that I had for Google, they were, except the final one, which was for non-tech round, all of those were coding rounds. And so they'll give you like 1 or 2 questions according to the time that they have. And they would expect you to solve those questions. So yes, a lot of other skills are necessary with competitive coding, but competitive coding is a must.
okay.
And what is the app time to begin with the interview preparation for these big MNCs? I mean, should we
Okay.
start from first year only, or?
I mean, first year would be a lot sooner, I believe. I mean, you are not even well aware with, I guess, you won't even know a language to start with. So maybe like your third year would be an appropriate time, like after your at the ending of the second year, third year. I mean, that would be an appropriate time to just get into competitive coding. And when I'm saying competitive coding, I don't mean, take part in those big competitive coding rounds and all that happen, right? The competitions that happen. When I'm saying competitive coding, I mean actually understanding the data structures and just practicing these questions for yourself, not just taking part in competitions and everything. Because to do that, you obviously require many skills than just learning these data structures, right? You need a lot of practice for that. So what I did was just understanding all these data structures and then practicing these questions, not actually like taking part in the coding rounds and stuff.
Okay. And there is this imposter syndrome that, like my friend is having these many stars and all that. So have you faced this kind of thing? Or
I mean, yeah, so kind of in the final year, right? I mean, I didn't imagine I would get into Google, because I obviously didn't focus so much on competitive coding like beforehand. And I had a few people in my batch who were like very much involved into these things. Even I had this belief, okay, that is the only thing that you need, and it's too late to start now, but that's not the case. I mean, it's never too late to start.
and can you share some insights, like what is if beginner wants to start for the competitive coding? So what he should do and what he shouldn't do?
Okay. So first of all, it is very intimidating, this entire competitive coding thing. Even I used to feel like that how to even start with this. But I would say very first would be to actually focus in your DSA subject, because like at least 30% of what you need is covered in that. Like all of the algorithms that are taught in that, those are useful. I mean, these are some things that you should know, right? All the graphs and trees and all these algorithms that are taught. I mean, it's not a waste of your time. So obviously focus on that. But yeah, if you want to start with competitive coding, I would say first start with data structures. Actually understand why each of these data structures are used. So for me, I went through Geeks for Geeks and just studied each of these data structures first, and a few like very basic algorithms, like very necessary, the basic algorithms that you should know, and how to like manipulate these data structures and everything. And then I would focus on practicing some questions on each of these data structures. So just not just like randomly going about and just selecting these many questions and okay, I've done 200 questions on LeetCode or whatever, but actually just like segregating out of topics that, yeah, I need to practice some from this topic, some from this topic. Okay, I'm weaker in this, so I should practice more. And these things, like, they would come naturally to you after you start. Like it may sound like, how do I get in? But once you start, I mean, it gets easier. I mean, you might even enjoy doing it. Yeah. If you are somebody who loves code, who likes to like code and all, you are going to actually enjoy this process. So it might sound intimidating at first, but once you go in, it gets easier.
And Kaya, do you like to share your favorite resources for interview preparation?
Okay, so as I said, for the competitive coding part, for data structures, I went through Geeks for Geeks, and for practicing these, I went through LeetCode. So again, it was so for that, I like found some questions and like a list of questions that people have already made, that has like all these questions segregated and everything. So just like randomly searching on Google and finding those lists of questions for particular company that you're applying for. That, and for revising these object orientation concepts and everything, just I don't believe I went through a specific website for that, but yeah, I would just search like most asked interview questions and stuff like that, and that is how I prepared.
Okay.
Okay, so Malia, what do you think the approach should be to enhance one's resume that has a higher possibility to get shortlisted for an interview when one is applying off-campus per se?
Okay, so I would give you my answer for that, but before that, I'd say that I wouldn't exactly know, right? Because I mean, I did what I could to improve my resume, but
Yeah.
I have never like hired another person based on that. So I would just give you my insights on what it should be. So I've seen a lot of resumes, and from that, so the first thing is how it looks, right? Sometimes it's a lot cluttery for many people. I've seen that it's difficult to read and everything. So that is something we should keep in mind, that even though it does not look pretty and everything, it should be like very readable. And you should focus on emphasizing a certain things. Like if you are writing your grades, you're saying, let's say that 2021, did you graduate or something? And then you are writing your grades over there, that CPI something something. So if you really want, right, if it's above 8.5 or something, and you really want them to see, then you should like emphasize it, right? Write it in bold letters, increase those fonts, stuff like that. And yeah, like actually go through your resume once or twice and see if you don't have mistakes, because I've seen like people have sent me resumes to just go through that, and they have like grammatical mistakes or some punctuation marks that are missing or extra or something like that. So the format of it is very important, because that shows how much you actually put effort into that, right, into building those resumes. And if there is a mistake like that, that is obviously not going to act in your favor. And how to fill in those resumes, right? So most important part would be the first part, that should be the section that should be for your projects, because as a university graduate, you don't have much experience. If you have an internship, obviously mention that. That is the most important thing, right? The internships, if you have that. And if not, then your projects. So for that, obviously you have to build at least 3 to 4 projects is what you should list in your resume. So I'm not sure what happens in IT, but at least for computer engineering, we have these projects starting from the second year. We have a lot of projects that we build, right, for the curriculum. So mention those, mention the points, what you did in that. And for each projects, like mention some feature, something that is something that is very unique to your project, or something that you implemented and you used a different technology for that, right? Because these things, they'll give you something to talk about in an interview. That if you tell someone that I built so and so project in so and so technology, and then they'd ask you like, what did you actually do in that, right? So you want to mention those things. So things that you mention in your resume should be something that could give you some talking points.
Okay.
And then, yeah, the last thing would be to mention the clubs that you are in, obviously. Yeah.
Can you emphasize on the process that you followed to make your resume get it shortlisted?
Okay. So, well, I mean, I didn't have a process per se, but I checked that it was appropriate enough. I got it reviewed from a few people, a few of my friends who could like just check from another person's perspective if it looks all right. Uh, and yeah, so I had a lot of things to like mention in the resume, because the projects and the clubs, and you can mention your skills, you can mention your education and all of that. So
Are there any common keywords FANG companies search for in a resume? In a resume?
apart from your college name being IIT, I don't think so.
Okay.
And do college matters for getting into fine companies?
I believe, yeah, it does. I mean, so this year maybe they were recruiting more people, is probably how they would have even reached to me, you know. But if they get good candidates from IITs, why would they bother going further out? So obviously, like it is a good benefit if you are from a good college, right? But it's not impossible to not like get in if you are not from an IIT or anything.
And getting a job at Google is not an easy nut to crack in the first place. We all knew that. So can you please elaborate the entire process that you followed to finalize your selection in detail?
Okay. So, well, in my final year, in the last second semester, the seventh semester, I focused more on my interview preparation. I stopped focusing on my studies part as much as I used to, and I got into the complete coding thing. And I was preparing for that, and it was about in September or something that I had applied for this job. And then there was a coding test that was there. I gave that, but I had no expectations. But then in about like end of September somewhere, I got a mail that that I applied and they'd be interested. So then there was a phone screening round right next day, and so that just she wanted to see like if I'm even aware with the concepts and all. So there was just like some 9 to 10 questions, which were like based on the time complexities of certain algorithms or some sorting algorithms, if you know that or not, and some system design questions. So just some basic questions to see where you are at. So after the phone screening round is done, there is an interview screening. So that would be a coding round, but ideally that would be of a somewhat easier level. So there would be one or so generally what I faced in my interviews was there was only just one question, and then the second would be an improvisation on that question. So that would be there. And after the phone screening round was done, my interviewer, my recruiter, she was like constantly in touch with me. And so after that was done, they would schedule about 5 more interviews. So these are the on-site interviews and the important ones. So I had 3 of these interviews on one day and 2 of them on the other day. And so out of these 5, the first 4 are technical. So that would be just coding. As I said, one question and a revision on that, or 2 separate questions, or it depends on your interviewer. So that was there in the 4 rounds. And in the 5th round is what they call a Googliness interview. So that is basically if you will just fit in the company culture or not. So those are, that was a non-tech interview based on, what situations have you faced and how would you handle them, certain questions like that. And yeah, after that was done, I was selected and they sent me a job offer.
So is there any strategy, particular strategy that you have made before, or you just go through randomly?
Okay. So what I did was when I like seriously started with competitive coding, right? So whatever questions I did solve, I had a Google Doc separately for that, and I used to like write down the final algorithm, right? So a very important thing is like when you're practicing, right? That on LeetCode or somewhere, if you practice on LeetCode, right? Because that is what I'm aware with. So let's say you're practicing a question, so you give enough time to that to try to solve it yourself. Obviously, it's not going to come instantly, but you try to solve it. And after you are done, obviously, like definitely go through the discussion section. So actually, like spend time finding out if your what you wrote was the most optimized answer or not. And obviously, you're going to find that it was not, and there is a better way to do it. So I used to then mention these things in one doc. And before any of my interviews, I used to go through this entire doc so that if at least these questions are asked, it should not be that I practiced it and I didn't know, because certain of these questions, right, it is not very intuitive. You're not going to get it in your first try. So it is important that you like revisit them and actually remember, okay, this kind of question is asked and this method can be applied to that. So that is what I did. Like I practiced and then I had a log of that. And before any of these interviews, I used to go through that.
So you mentioned about LeetCode. So are you active on CodeShip also, or only LeetCode?
No, for my interview preparation, I just went through LeetCode.
LeetCode. So can you share how to use LeetCode in best possible way?
Okay. So if you can get a premium of that, that would be good. But if you can't, then there are some not so ethical resources that could at least point you that, okay, these are the questions that are most asked in Google and stuff, right? So you may not have access to all of those questions, but some of them you will have access to. So they are open, but they don't mention that it is a question that is most asked in Google or something like that. So I used to follow that thing that, okay, these are most asked in this company. So I would practice those questions then. And as I said, always go through the discuss section. And after you have solved it, mention, like have a log of it somewhere so that you can go through it again.
So not so ethical resources are everywhere. So can you share any not so ethical?
I'm not I don't exactly remember the name of the website, but it was something called LeetFree or something. So that did not have much. Like the website itself didn't have much, but it had the links to these questions on LeetCode. Like, so yeah, so certain questions that are there. So if you have a premium and if you go through most asked questions in Google or something, that is obviously like locked for non-premium accounts. So they would list all these questions there, and some of them are available in the not premium account as well. So that is what I meant, that you can like at least go through them. And even even for the questions that are not there, right, in the non-premium accounts, there are people who have like solved that, and they have this GitHub pages or something that they list it down there. So it's not like necessary that you need this platform to solve it, right? You need what you need is the questions and the most optimized answers to them.
And there is this dilemma that should I do development or competitive coding? And we have seen your profile that you have excelled in both. So how we should manage? I mean, development is easy than competitive coding, but then also competitive coding is also important. So how we should manage these both, and also we have to prepare for our college exams. So how to manage these three criteria?
So for exams, I would say that attend your lectures enough so that you know what is going on at least, right? You should not be completely blank, right? You should have some context, sketch how okay, these things are going on, right? You can obviously like go later and learn these things yourselves from the books or other resources, but at least have some context of what is going on. And then I like gradually realized that it's not important to study a lot before your sessionals and everything, but like one day prior to your sessionals that was enough for me. So that was the only week that I really focused on studying. So that is how I managed that part. And so for sessionals, if you like get somewhere around 30s, that is like the best that you could get, because you still have your externals to cover up for. And if you actually like focus in your sessionals, then externals you won't be completely blank. You would have a lot of context, and you are only would be going to revise these things. So that is how I went through the studying part. So not a lot of time was spent in that. Projects, how would you focus on the development part? So projects were mostly the projects that they were assigned to us, right? Like by the university, that in this subject you have to do one project. So obviously like choose something interesting, that whatever that interests you, and something that is interesting enough to talk. Like if you go for like a library management system or something, that is obviously a lot used. But when you mention that in an interview, it wouldn't give you so much to talk about. So that is something that I would say, that select projects that you feel are something that you can like talk about in your interviews. So obviously I had to spend time in developing these projects, but I mean, it's a teamwork, and like not a lot of your time would go through that as well. So then, I mean, apart from these things, again, you have a lot of time to. So I don't know, like people just say that we don't find enough time, right, in our college, that we have sessionals and we have this going on, that going on, but you're not actually like focusing on that. Nobody is like studying even a week prior to the sessionals, right? So you don't spend your time there. For journals, I would say, at least for computer engineering, our faculties are much more linear than the other departments. So we don't have like big journals to write and everything. So apart from the time that you spend in college, right, the 8:30 to 5:30, apart from that, you have a lot of time that you can like spend in clubs or your projects or your competitive coding.
Okay.
Okay, so can you emphasize on the type and the level of questions one can expect in a bank interview or any other big company interview?
Okay, so I would say medium to hard questions. So that is what you should focus on. So if you're practicing on lead code, I mostly went through the medium questions and some hard questions. But the thing is that to get into even the interview part of that, you have to go through the coding round that is there, the first coding test that happens. So in that, you can face like hard questions itself. So it is important that you practice both medium and medium hard questions. So in the actual interview, in the actual interview, the questions are not completely, out of this world. That is what I used to think, that when I knew that I had to interview for Google, right, I had a lot of preparation that I had done. But what I believed was they would throw a question at me that I wouldn't even know how to approach. But that is generally not what happens. If you have enough practice, then you would know at least how to approach the questions and solve them.
Have you tried other platforms like CodeChef, InterviewBit, etc., SPOJ?
So CodeChef I went through somewhat, but as I said, it was just LeetCode was just a platform for me to get these resources. But what mostly you need is the questions that you want to solve and an optimistic answer to that. So it's not very important like which platform you go through. But I found that on LeetCode there are enough like medium difficulty questions that you can actually go through and learn. Because if you just if you try doing completely easy questions, you're not going to learn much. If you go on with hard questions, your brain is not going to like automatically come up with solutions, right? So you would just like feel disheartened and maybe stop with it. So medium is somewhere that you can try out as well and get enough to learn as well. So that is something that medium level questions is something that gives you more practice.
Can you share your Google interview experience, like how the questions you asked during coding round, and if there was any HR round, then how was that?
Yeah. So actually I found it like a lot structured. Like obviously they have it all figured out. They have a complete like process that they follow. So a recruiter was always like in touch with me, and she would tell me if I performed well in my interviews or not. And even when they schedule, right? So they'll tell me today that, okay, you'll have these rounds, but they would only like schedule it 20, 30 days later, so that you get enough time to practice for them as well. And the questions that were asked were not, as I said, they were not completely hard. At least for from the 4 interviews that I had, for the first 3, the questions were like of medium level. In the last round, I had a question that was like a little bit harder than expected. And the interviewers, they would mostly just focus on your coding. They would ask you a question and those you have to solve. So initially they would ask you maybe an introduction about you or something that just, sets you in the place. So that's not like very important, but something to just talk about. They'll maybe ask you to introduce yourself or something. And then mostly it is just coding. So yeah, the language that you want to code in, that would be your choice. They don't have any restriction on that. And you have to write your codes in a sort of a Google Doc. It's not Google Doc, like they have a platform for that, so that it is at least code colored and everything, but you won't get auto completions and stuff like that. So yeah, that is how it went.
And was there any HR round or anything?
Right. So the last one was this behavioral round. I'm not sure what exactly they call it, but it is based on like, so they ask you certain
Malika, your voice is not clearly audible.
I don't think so. She's responding. Let me contact her. Guys, hang in there.
Hey, am I audible?
Yes, now perfect.
Yeah. So I guess we were talking about the final
HR.
round, yeah.
Nice.
The HR round, yeah. So that is what they call the Googliness and leadership round. And in that, they basically like test if you will fit in the entire culture of Google or not. So they would ask you questions based on like what problems you have already faced and how you came up for a solution for that. So I mean, the skills that, so basically what I feel the skills that they want to test in you is if you can be a good leader or not, like if you take initiatives or not, if you are someone who is like a lot arrogant or someone who is like humble, who is ready to learn, who is ready to teach, how would you fit in a team, things like that.
And is there any specific data structure or any algorithm which Google focuses on? I mean, Google is notoriously famous for dynamic programming. So is that a thing?
I mean, in none of my interviews, I faced dynamic programming, which I believe I was very lucky. Most questions that I faced were on graphs entries, and these things are, graphs entries are like, for me, they are my favorite kind of data structures. Like any questions on that, at least I know that I'll be able to approach them.
Okay. So any specific question that you would like to share with us?
I don't think I'm allowed to share the actual questions that I was asked.
Okay. That's
Okay, so Malia, can you generalize the criteria on which basis are we judged during an interview?
Right.
Any-
So competitive
key
coding is
points?
obviously, okay. So for Google, specific to Google, competitive coding is a must. Obviously, if you're not able to solve a question, maybe you wouldn't get a call back for another round. And apart from that, I believe just your skills, your communication skills. And these things you can develop being a part of clubs or just being active in your college, right? So your communication skills. So things like, so they'd ask you a question and then they would expect you to ask questions on that. I mean, it's not completely they gave you a question and then you write an answer and they check if it is right or not. They're going to guide you through it. So they might even like, if you are stuck somewhere, they might give you some hints. So they would like obviously check if you are taking up on that hint or not. Like how fast do you get, like how fast your instincts work. And if you don't understand, then do you ask enough and do you ask like the right questions or not? Things like that are obviously like, so they are not listed criterias that, you know, very hard and fast that they are going to check this thing, but it obviously affects your entire interview round. And also like in any interview, not just in Google, but in any interview, they would, the interviewer will, as a closing step, ask you if you have any questions for them or things like that, right? So a good practice would be to ask a question, then any question, right? I mean, you don't have to actually lead that conversation, but if you ask one question, they are going to actually elaborate on that, and you might even get to learn something about the company that you didn't. And okay, so if so that was just for Google, but for other companies, I mean, it depends. So for the companies that come in our college, right, for the college placements, so for them, not just coding, that is obviously like there, but a lot of our core subjects come into picture then, and for some, even the frameworks that they work in, that they come in part. Yeah.
Okay.
So apart from you mentioned about that core subjects are also really important. So apart from interview, do you think that these subjects are really important at other point of time in our IT career?
Yes, of course they are. I mean, so
And there are other
obviously, like
hardware
just
subjects also there. There
sorry.
are a lot of hardware subjects also there. So do you think that these subjects are important? Should we focus on them
Okay,
also?
right. So obviously, I mean, so the ideology that I had was that these subjects are there, and you don't have any say in that. You have to study that, and you need some grades in them as well. So either like, so if you are like actually attending lectures and stuff, right, you are going to focus on that, and the day before your sessionals, you are going to study for that subject, whether you like it or not, and whether you think it is important or not. So the thing is that anything that you learn is not going to go in waste. That is what I believe, right? Anything that we study, like CSA or something that you're talking about, right? The hardware part that comes in. Maybe you're not going to interact with that right now, but maybe at a later point you will, or maybe you will learn something new in that. Like while learning that, you might like learn something new. Let's say that computer networks that is there, right? The subject that comes in, I guess, the 5th semester or something. So that is generally, I have not seen many questions in interviews based on computer networks, but a lot of things that we learn there could be helpful in your actual journey as an engineer, as a software engineer. So, I mean, obviously certain core subjects are very important, but even apart from that, it's not that they are a complete waste of your time. As a computer engineer, I believe that these things that are taught to us, like in just 3-4 years of time span, it's not a lot. It's not something that you can think of that, Acha, this is not very important, this is not very relevant to me. These are things that you should know.
Okay. And you have given interviews at both BNY Mellon and Google. So how are the internship interviews different from job interviews?
Okay, so because I did not give internship interview at Google, I wouldn't specifically be able to compare that. But I believe the interview for BNY, so actually the thing was for BNY as well, the interview was for internship plus job. Like it wasn't very fixed, it will be just an internship or just a job or what. So they weren't like, it wasn't just an internship interview, but I believe, yeah, they'll be, so they know like in which year you are, and so they probably like expect that much amount from you, like what are they expecting from interns and all. So it should be a little bit easier than that, but for me I didn't see much difference because it wasn't just an internship interview.
Okay.
Okay, so Malaya, how are the virtual interviews different from on-site ones, and what are the challenges that one can face during a virtual interview?
Okay, so I wouldn't exactly know the difference between them because all I ever gave were virtual interviews. I just gave one on-site physical interview, and that was for an internship in a company in Baroda or somewhere. So, I mean, I wouldn't have the difference between that per se, but how, like, what certain things that you can face in a virtual interview would be obviously like have a good internet connection, but things like just losing connection or something could happen anytime, right, to anybody. So don't panic during that and handle that well, like, or even that your interviewer may be facing some problem with that. So handle these things well, like don't get too much affected by these things. That can happen anytime, and even the interviewer will understand that because even they have shifted from the physical to the online path, right? Have like your video cameras on. If they don't want you to have it on, they'll like specifically tell you, right? Okay, it's okay if you don't want it on, you can turn it off. But it's a good practice to have your audio video both on. And if you sense like so like as I said at the end, when they want to ask you, when they ask you like if you have any questions on something, so it's always like good to try to have a conversation with the person, because like when you do that, they'll learn something about you as well, right? And that could like help in their decision process.
Okay.
Would you like to share some do's and don'ts regarding the interview? I mean, Google interview or any FANG company interview, do's and don'ts.
Okay, so I mean, for the interview itself, just be very, when they give you a question, listen to that very well. And if you have like any doubts, right, ask them right away. If you have a question in the actual question, or like that what condition should you take care of or things like that, they might even like, it depends on your interviewer, that they might even leave a loophole there, that they would expect you to maybe ask a question on that, right? They wouldn't give you something right away, they would want you to ask question. So always like ask questions, don't assume ke, it should be like this only, right? The question should be like, I practiced it like that, so maybe it should be like that only, but it's not always the case. So you should always like ask questions and clarify before that. And as I said, that sometimes they might obviously like whenever you are stuck, they would try to give you hints. So catch up on that. Like listen to that. It's not always to like confuse you and everything. They want you to succeed in these interviews, right? So listen to that and take in all of that. So they would obviously like judge you on these skills, on how you respond and how easily can you grab things. Don'ts would be, I guess, don't argue with them maybe. So I like, there was a friend who had an interview and she thought okay, maybe like she is right and the interviewer was just trying to confuse her or something, but that does not happen much often. So if they are saying something, maybe just like listen to them, maybe they are trying to point you to the right direction.
Okay. So now that we have a clear idea of interviews, let's talk about your life at Google. Can you
Okay.
describe a day as a software engineer at Google?
Okay, so I mean, it's great here. The culture is the best part, right? I mean, it's not a completely like, there is a work-life balance that is there, that is like always there, and they don't. So there is not just like work. There are a lot of like sessions and all that are involved, which are not just like technical things, right? Even just like fun activities with your team. So there would be like meetings that there are just some fun activities which are organized for teams, or there could be like some leadership sessions that could take place that would help you develop a certain skills. And so I mean, it's too soon for me to tell like maybe okay, how things actually work, but for right now, like they would they would just assign you some task, right? Maybe a ticket, a bug that is assigned to you, and then there is 2 week sprint that happens, right? And in that you like work on these things that are assigned to you, and there are daily or alternate day meetings that happen with your teams, and you just like know okay, acha, what they are working in as well. And well, there will be a lot of people that join along with you, so they would so in the start there would be a training phase and in that you will get a lot to interact with the other new joiners as well, Nooglers as they are called. So you get to interact with other Nooglers, and so I mean that's a way to form some connections, and then maybe like that will help you later.
Okay.
Okay. Can you share any interesting product that you are working on at Google that we use every day? Thank you.
Okay, that wouldn't be something that you use every day. So the team I am in is it is a lot in on cloud infrastructure. So technologies like Kubernetes and all of that. So I mean, even I'm not like very well aware. I was not like very well aware with those, but you get time to learn. So it won't always be like that. Like that is the team that I am in. So that's why I'm working in these technologies. But like it depends in which team you are. So according to that, the tech stack would be. So the team I'm in is actually Looker, which is a business intelligence tool that was recently, like a few years back, it was acquired by Google. So that is not something that you would be using every day.
And what was your final year project? Can you please describe that?
Okay, so my the pre-final year project, right?
Oh yes.
Right. So like the final year was internship, and in that the internship project was used. But the pre-final year, so in a team of 3, we worked in natural language processing. So we just like wanted to try out something different, like something on the lines of machine learning or something, because we had never worked in that, and we had enough time to like learn and develop something. So the project that was book genre prediction. So initially we started with a very different idea, but what we could we like finally brought it down to predicting genres of a book out of the summary. Like if you give a paragraph about the book, then we'll predict which genre it belongs to. And so how we did was none of us were well aware with natural language processing or even like machine learning, right? So the initial part was mostly spent in learning all these terms and maybe like seeing like which algorithms are used and all. So the final result that we got, maybe it was not very much like a new thing, but it helped us learn a lot. And finally, even like we had some time, so we deployed that project. So even for that, we used Azure, and for that, we deployed it in a virtual machine. So, I mean, so because I was part of Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador, right? I had conducted some sessions on Docker. We had some session on Kubernetes, or just I had a lot of access to Azure and the virtual machines and everything. Because I worked in those things, it was it helps me like right now, right? I didn't know I'm going to be working in Kubernetes in my very first job, but because I had access to that, it somewhere I believe like helps me today.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so Maria, going off topic, it is a general belief that soon AI will take over several jobs in sector like web dev, yada yada yada, and lots of software engineers will lose their jobs. What is your take on this? And should the students be now learning web dev and app dev, or should they migrate to the safer things that cannot be replaced by AI?
I mean, what do you think won't be replaced by AI if AI is to like take on the world, right? I mean, if this thing happens, it won't be like very soon that you're going to all like lose your jobs, right? So, I mean, it's not something so soon that you should like worry about that. Like right now, what your focus would be to get a job, basically, get some security. Like if that is what you want to go for. I mean, if you want to go for further studies now, then maybe that should be your interest. But yeah, I mean, that is not something that is a lot concerning to us right now, right?
Yes.
And final words of advice you would like to give to aspiring computer science students?
Okay. So I would say that for competitive coding, it can be a lot intimidating to start with, but don't feel that. I mean, it's not that hard. Even when I started, I used to feel, okay, it's too late maybe, or how to start, how to get into these things, but it's not that difficult. I mean, if you work enough for that, it's not that difficult. And even if you don't get into a bank or something, right, it's not the end of the world. You still have like chance to get into these companies a year or two later as well, and if you like get to work in startups or something, right, I mean that is a different experience too, and it's not that it can't be helpful. So like try for the best one, but maybe like don't get too disheartened if you don't land there right now, because this is not just like a one time thing, right, that you went into this company so it's that. No, it's not that. You can like obviously like apply a year later, 2 years later, and you can get in.
So now we'll have a doubt session. So whoever wants to ask Malika, then can please unmute yourselves, or you can write in the chat section. I think there are a lot of doubts already there in the chat section.
So I got disconnected in between, so I can only see the last two questions, I guess. But if you guys like have that, then you can mention it.
You can retype them. Those who
Okay,
have
I will do that for you.
Okay, so Dinky asks, do you feel MLSA played a part in getting into Google? Yes, as I said, all of these clubs taught me things, and as I mentioned that in MLSA, I had a lot of access to the to Azure, which is obviously which is a cloud technology, and right now my work is mostly in cloud technology. So it has helped me not like much getting into Google, but like after getting there, just being aware of certain terms that I would probably not have known if I was not a part of MLSA. Which books did you read for getting good control over data structures and algorithms? Okay, I didn't go through a book. I went through Geeks for Geeks, yeah, but I didn't go through a book. But there is this book, right, CTCI. Maybe, yeah, you can go for that. So I wanted to, like, somebody suggested that to me, and I wanted to try that out. And I went through some of these things in the book. So that can also be like a good start for you if you want. But for me, I had already gone through Geeks for Geeks and all those like basic algorithms and everything. So it was not much required for me. I hope that answers your question. Okay, when to start building resume? I mean, in which semester? Okay, it's never too soon to start building a resume, right? So one advice I'd give is whatever things you do, right? So LinkedIn is obviously, like, all of you might have a LinkedIn profile. If not, create that. And you can like mention all of the things that you are doing on LinkedIn. If you go and see my LinkedIn profile, it might like sound a lot, "Acha, she has done like so much," but this is because I have listed so much. People who do things, they don't like, you don't. So if you do something right now, 2 years later, you might not remember. So like keep on constantly updating your LinkedIn, and similar with your resume, right? You can even right now, you can like, if you don't have a resume, build it, write your skills, write the projects that you have made, and keep updating it later on. So it's not like one time thing that you have to do, but you can like always just start even right now and then keep on updating it. What are the eligible criteria for internship in MNC? So in FANG, if you ask me, it would be competitive coding along with your communication skills and everything. In other, in some service-based companies, I believe your core subjects are something that can help you along with competitive coding. How did you apply to Google on the career site or with a referral? So for me, it was via their official career portal that is there. Any good platform for mock interviews? I didn't go through a lot of mock interviews, and also I'm not aware of that. Thank you, Harsh. How much did you lectures play role in learning, or else most of thing was self-study? So for me, I mean, for some subjects, like obviously like the lectures help. For some faculties that I believe they were good in teaching their particular subject. So for some lectures, yeah, they were good. For some, it was self-study. I mean, it really depends on you, and like if you like the faculty's teaching style or not. Is university result so much important? I don't believe it is so much important. It's good to have good grades, but not like very high grades, right? Something about like 8.5 would do. Which framework is used in Google mostly? So for Google, most of the technologies they use are Google's internal specific tools. So not many open source tools that are there that are used in Google. Even for version controlling or the actual frameworks that are there, it's all specific to Google, which is used internally, and those are not open source. It does not matter, like they wouldn't judge you based on the frameworks that you have learned. And even if you do learn any framework right now, it's always going to be a help later on campus or off campus. Did you apply for Google? For us, it is only off campus. Like Google does not come on campus for us. So I applied off campus, yeah.
So, does anyone have any more doubts? They can raise them or they can unmute themselves. Malia, can you
Yeah.
check out the section?
Yeah, not an extreme version of Patriot, but just asking, as per Google, 30% of India employees are there in Google. So what is there in Google? Why they can't stay in India and start something that no other country have, as Indians are more talented? I mean, a lot of things go on in the India team as well. That maybe the, I mean, it really depends on the company and all, right? I mean, there are certain initiatives that can be just country specific that the India team is starting or some other country that they are starting. It really like depends on the company. And I'm not sure if this fits in with the entire theme here. When in an interview, do they really care about TLE? Like in CodeChef, even if you write 2 for loops, it can throw a TLE. But in an interview, if you're not aware of an optimized approach and you write a naive solution, does it affect much? Okay. So in an interview, how you generally start with is they would give you a question and you would probably like always want to start with a naive solution. Like even if you do know the optimized answer to that, right? Obviously, like just start with a naive solution that this is how you would solve it the most basic way. And then, so they would not like, so it's not a very disconnected process. Like they would guide you through and they would understand, they would try to they'll make you optimize it more. Only if they are sure that acha, yeah, this is going to work, then they will tell you that code it down. Like it's not that they ask a question and you start coding. They'll talk with you, they'll see if it is right. If it's not the most optimized solution, they would maybe they'll pursue you to try a better approach, or maybe they'll try to give you hints and everything. And in any interviews that I faced, they don't actually run your code. So you're not going to face a TLE. Yeah, they'll obviously see what time complexity code you wrote, and they'll ask you like what time complexity is this and if you can do better and everything. But they're not actually going to run your code. So little mistakes here and there, that would not affect it as well. I hope that answers your question, Dinky. If you have anything else, then you can maybe unmute. Okay. During CP, how to get quick logic except practice? Oh my God, there's no another way except practice. Yeah, you'll have to just practice to get a hang of it. So the thing is that the DSA that is taught in our college, right? I mean, it is very relevant to what you will actually practice as well. Like even if you're practicing yourself, these are the data structures that you'll go through, and you're not going to find things which are completely like new that is not known to you. But the thing is that because we don't have practice is why we don't know how to approach these questions. But I've seen that if you have enough practice, like, and if somebody asks you a question, you will know how to approach it because you are in that entire mindset. So I'm sorry, but there is no quick workaround for that. Google hire specific title as machine learning engineer. Not for a graduate position. I mean, they'll just hire you and then according to your skills, they'll put you in one of their teams. What if someone wants to get in MNCs for the core security job? Not a lot of experience there, But maybe if they have a job opening for that, you can apply and maybe talk to somebody who actually has a certain job like that. I'm sorry, I'm not well aware with that. What type of projects can we add in resume? Okay, so as I said, there should be something that you feel is very interesting and you feel is something that you did an exceptional job in that. So like among your many projects, if you want to select one of those, then you can pick things that are more interesting, that you feel can create an impact and that you can much more talk about. But if you don't have like enough projects, just mention what you have built. What is the best way to kickstart journey as Flutter developer? Okay, maybe just like learn Flutter and yeah, like what I did, because I believe that because I have been involved in Flutter, is you are asking me this question. So what I did was just go through the courses that were there on Flutter, right? The introductory courses, and then just like building projects and going through the documentation is how I did it. But I'm not an expert there again. So sorry, I'll not be able to resolve your doubt completely. Can I select an MNC only based on web or app development? Okay, so if you're talking about FANG, they don't actually ask you questions based on a certain framework or certain things like that. If they are going to select you in a cloud role, they won't ask you questions on cloud or anything. For a starter role, at least, it is just based on competitive coding, I believe. And maybe like for an experienced person, like they'll have system design questions and things like that. But doesn't much matter like on what technology you previously worked in. It's just like how good are your project solving skills and all. Because as I said, like these companies, they have their company specific frameworks and technologies, right? So it doesn't make much sense if you know a technology or not. And you are always going to, if you are good at learning, then you'll learn it in a short amount of time. For cracking big MNC interviews, we must know both web and app development skills. No. Just your data structures and coding skills should be enough. Consider cybersecurity. Not sure what you mean, Harshil.
Actually, I have asked one question previously. So for that purpose, I have asked that what
Can you
if
please
someone
say that
wants
again?
to get in MNCs for cybersec?
So if they, as I said, if I'm not sure if they have enough positions for that for a university graduate, but if they have, then do apply to it and maybe talk to somebody who actually has a job there. Because I don't have any experience in cybersecurity or those roles, I wouldn't be able to answer your question. But I don't believe they have many roles open for that as a university graduate. Maybe we'll just have to
Okay,
like
thank you.
get some experience and then try after a few years.
Okay, thank you.
How many, yeah, sure. How many projects we should mention in our resume? 4 to 5 should be enough. I mean, it depends. Like if you don't have anything else to fill it with your projects. When we go for internship, most of the companies attract us to join their company if we had skill in our hand. So how to pick a good one? Okay, for internship. I mean, obviously, like if it is a big name, if you feel, go for that, because in your resumes, it is going to make a difference. I mean, it really just depends on you, right? If you want a big name or if you want to work in something that is actually making an impact or helping you learn and all. So maybe go for somewhere where you get enough to work on so that it actually helps you. And then maybe the company culture as well matters. Like if it's something that is important to you, then maybe look at that, yeah. Which technology or role will be secure and bright future? Cloud maybe, yeah, that's not going away anytime soon.
Okay, so
Okay,
does
thank
anyone
you.
have any more doubts? They can raise them, or we can end the session right here. Okay, so
Thank
here
you,
we come
Sanisha.
to the end of today's session. I, on the behalf of entire CSI team, first of all spread my most sincere thanks to Malianan, who agreed to have a session and gave her valuable time from a busy schedule to grace this meeting and share her knowledge and experience. Further, a big thanks to Professor Siddhartha for providing us with the required support, guidance, and mentorship. Last but not least, I would like to extend my gratitude to all the participants for making to this session a big success. We hope you have gained some knowledge from the session. We would like to end with a small request to fill the feedback form and help us improve in the future. The link for the same is provided in the chat box. Also follow us on our Instagram handle at the CSI _DD to stay tuned for upcoming session and the latest update. Here we officially end our first episode of the series Achievers on the Line. Similar episodes will be continued throughout the month. Stay tuned and have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Maliha.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank
It
you
was
so
really
much,
nice
Nikin and
talking
Kush.
to you.
It was a great session. It was honored to be here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you,
It was an
Maria.
honor to have you.
Yeah.
So yes, everyone can leave this meeting.